Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, today we're dealing ourselves into a hand of insightful ideas about life. Using this classic analogy, life is like a game of cards.
It's a familiar phrase, but we're going to shuffle up your thinking on it, See how different people have used this comparison to understand. The wins, losses, and unexpected turns we all experience.
Exactly. We've got some fascinating sources to play with today. A quote from Jawaharlal Nehru, blog posts from Weekly Wellness and Stephen Musings, and even a piece by Teresa Kayaba Kennedy, where she mentions learning card tricks from Muhammad Ali.
Now, that's a wild card I wasn't expecting.
Right, but first, I want to start with something Weekly Wellness brought up. We talk about the game Rich Man, Poor Man. The person in first place gets to trade their worst cards for the best cards of the person in last place. Have you ever felt stuck in that last place spot in life? Tell us about it in the comments.
That feeling of being stuck, it's something so many of us can relate to. And it connects perfectly to this quote from Jawaharlal Nehru. Life is like a game of cards. The hand you are dealt is determinism. The way you play it is free will. What do you make of that?
I think Nehru is saying that some things are out of our control, like the family we're born into, or the circumstances of our early life. That's the hand we're dealt, but it's not the end of the story.
Right. We always have choices to make, and those choices, that's where our free will comes in. Weekly Wellness builds on this by talking about wild cards.
I love that they brought that up. It's like those moments in a card game where something completely unexpected happens, changing the entire course of the game.
Exactly. But what they point out is that our wild card is actually our ability to make decisions. It's in those choices, big or small, where we can really influence how our lives unfold.
This is making me think about this Stephen Musings blog. They compared life to a game of rummy, which I thought was a really interesting choice.
Oh, yeah. Rummy's a great example. What stood out to you from that comparison?
Well, they focused on how we all have different cards in life, different resources and talents, just like different hands in rummy. And it made me wonder, are some people dealt more aces, so to speak? Do some of us start with advantages others don't have? What do you think?
That's a really good question. And what's fascinating is that Stephen Musings goes on to say that even with a good hand, success in rummy isn't guaranteed. It's about the choices you make, how you adapt to what other players are doing. How have the people around you, their actions, impacted your game? I'm curious to hear your experiences in the comments.
That really highlights how interconnected our lives are, how we're all players in this grand game, influencing each other's moves. And there was this really insightful comment on that blog post that brought up something I hadn't even considered.
Oh, tell me about it. What was it?
The commenter asked, is success just about reaching a specific destination, or is it more about the journey itself? Like maybe it's a combination of both. And maybe think about how we define success and what truly matters in the end.
That's a profound point. Are we so focused on the winning hand that we forget to appreciate the individual moves, the challenges, the lessons we learn along the way? What do you think?
Right. What does success really look like for you? Let us know in the comments. And while you're thinking about that, let's bring in Teresa Kayaba Kennedy's blog post. She used gin rummy as her analogy, which got me thinking about strategy.
Gin rummy is all about constantly evaluating your cards, making decisions about what to keep and what to discard. It's very much about strategy and planning ahead.
And she learned card tricks from Muhammad Ali. Can you imagine? But beyond that amazing detail, her message is about accepting the hand you're dealt, but then actively working to optimize it.
It's like taking stock of your strengths and resources in life, figuring out what's working for you and what might be holding you back. What are those things for you? Tell us in the comments. It's like we're constantly dealt new cards in life, and we have to decide what to do with them. What are our keepers, and what do we need to let go of?
Exactly. And Teresa Kayaba Kennedy had some great actionable advice in her blog. Focus on the positive, she said. Play fair. Trust your gut. And most importantly, let go of dead weight.
Powerful stuff. Those are great principles to apply to life in general, don't you think? No matter what game we're playing.
Totally agree. So we've got all these different cards at play. The hand we're dealt, our decision-making power, the resources and challenges we face, and our ability to adapt and play strategically. What does this all mean for us as players in the game of life?
It means we have more agency than we often realize. We might not control the initial hand, but we can choose how we respond to it. We can choose to focus on our strengths, develop our skills, make strategic decisions, even if it means folding sometimes and waiting for a better opportunity.
That's a good point. Knowing when to walk away from a hand that's not working for you, that's a skill in itself. And sometimes Even when we feel like the deck is stacked against us, we can still find ways to play a poor hand well.
Exactly. It's about resilience, adaptability, and making the most of what you have. Even if it's not ideal, it's about focusing on what you can control. And sometimes that's just your attitude and your next move.
Weekly Wellness talked about how the person who starts at the top can end up at the bottom, and vice versa. Fortunes change. Just like in a card game, it's not always about the initial hand, but how you navigate the ups and downs as the game unfolds.
That's so true. Sometimes you're on a winning streak, and other times you're just trying to minimize your losses. The key is to stay in the game, learn from every hand, and keep adapting your strategy.
Speaking of strategy, what about the role of intuition? In card games, sometimes you just know when to hold them and when to fold them, right? How much do you think intuition should play into our decision-making in life?
Intuition is fascinating, isn't it? It's like tapping into a deeper level of knowing, beyond logic or reason, and I think it definitely has a place in our decision-making. But it needs to be balanced with other factors.
Like what?
Well, things like self-awareness, a clear understanding of your goals, and a willingness to assess risk versus reward. Intuition can give us a nudge in the right direction, but we still need to use our heads, weigh the pros and cons, and consider the potential consequences. What feels right in our gut might not always be the most strategic move in the long run. It's about finding that balance.
It's like knowing yourself as the player, not just playing the cards. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What am I willing to risk? And like you said, having clear goals and a sense of direction is crucial.
Absolutely. It's like having a game plan in mind. Before you even sit down at the table, where do you want to end up? What kind of game do you want to play?
And then there's the element of luck. In card games and in life. Sometimes you just get lucky. The right card comes at the right time. Or an unexpected opportunity falls into your lap. But we can't rely on luck alone, can we?
Of course not. Luck is a factor, for sure. But it's not something we can control. What we can control is how prepared we are to seize those opportunities when they arise.
So it's not about waiting for luck to strike. It's about being ready for it. It's about creating the conditions for good luck to find us. What do you think are some ways we can do that?
Well, for one, we can stay open to new experiences, be willing to step outside of our comfort zones, and connect with people from diverse backgrounds. The more we expand our network and our knowledge, the more likely we are to stumble upon those serendipitous moments. It's like shuffling the deck, increasing the chances of drawing that winning card.
And sometimes those lucky breaks come disguised as challenges or setbacks.
Yeah.
It's like drawing what seems like a bad card initially,
Right.
but it ends up being the key to winning the hand.
Exactly. It's all about perspective, right? How we choose to interpret those unexpected twists and turns. Sometimes what seems like a loss can actually be a game in disguise.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious, what's resonating most with you about this analogy of life as a game of cards? It really does make you think about all the different factors at play, both within our control and outside of it. What stands out to me is that even when life throws us those bad beats, so to speak, we still have the power to choose how we react, how we adapt our strategy, and what lessons we take away from those experiences.
Absolutely. This analogy reminds us that we are not merely passengers in life, but active participants, always making choices and shaping our own destinies. It's empowering and a little daunting at the same time.
Totally. So, to bring it back to our listeners, I want you to think about your own hand in life. What are your strengths, your challenges, those unique wild cards you've been dealt? And most importantly, what decisions can you make today to play your hand well, no matter what it looks like? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
What are those aces you're holding? And how can you use them strategically? And what about those cards you might need to discard to make room for something better? It's an ongoing process of evaluation and adjustment.
Exactly. Life, like any card game, is full of calculated risks and strategic moves. And sometimes the best move is simply to fold. Walk away from a situation that's no longer serving you and wait for a better opportunity.
And remember, even if you don't always win, the most important thing is to keep playing, to keep learning from each hand you're dealt, and to never underestimate the power of your own choices.
Beautifully said. Each game, each hand, is an opportunity for growth, for learning, and for becoming a more skillful player in the game of life. And who knows, maybe the next wild card you draw will be the one that changes everything.
It's all about perspective, resilience, and a willingness to keep learning and adapting.
Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the idea of life as a game of cards. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.
It's been a pleasure shuffling through these ideas with you.
And as always, we want to keep the conversation going. Head over to the comments. And tell us what resonated with you most from today's episode. What are some of your own wild cards in life? We're excited to hear your perspectives.
And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Deep Dive so you don't miss out on future episodes. Hit that bell icon to be notified every time we drop a new episode.
And speaking of new episodes, next time we'll be tackling a question that's close to all of our hearts. What is success for you?
We'll be exploring different perspectives, philosophical insights, and practical tips on defining and achieving your version of success.
Join us for another thought-provoking deep dive. Until then, keep playing your hand to the best of your ability.